It took the entire 162 games for us to get here. Now we're here.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra, Batiste. Alongside me is Jarvis Davis. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rival city. So book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And of course, the Atlanta Baseball Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, it has been a season for the ages for Chris Sale, but if we don't get a chance to see him again, it's been a good look so far. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about another face that maybe we won't see come 2025. But before we do that, we got to take you guys a couple days back on how the Braves even got to where we are today. So Jarvis, not one, not two, not 161, 162 games is what the Braves needed to get into the playoffs this postseason and this season. And it's something that we're not accustomed to, of course, but you got to take it back to Monday, right? Where literally you got to pause and say, it took them to the last day, the last game of a doubleheader to beat the Mets, no doubt, just so that you and I could still be having this conversation today.
Yeah, so talking about the emotional roller coaster that I was on, because I was just like watching the game, especially in game one in that double header. You just going through and seeing Ozzy Albies come through, and I'm just like, oh yes, this is Ozzy Albies' game. It's gonna go down. I'm posting videos on Twitter. I'm going crazy. I got the young brother that's a Phillies fan, that covers the Hawks. I can't even remember his name, escapes me right now. He put the little eyeballs.
Terrell, yeah.
Well, Terrell Thomas, he posted the little eyeballs after my video when the Mets came back. I was like, dude, I almost had to hold my mule, T. I had to hold my mule. I was like, bro, you better doggone win that World Series, the Phillies, because I promise you, I'm gonna mention you, dog. I'm coming back. So
Theirs needs to be Phillies or bust, or World Series or bust, right?
I rock with you, but I despise Phillies. But yeah, like in all seriousness, I think that going through that, and then in the second game, and when you have Marcel Iglesias and Joe Jimenez kind of redeem themselves, because Lord knows they didn't look too good in that first game as well. So it was just, man, what is going on? It was just typical Braves, right? This is the typical what we've had to deal with. We just kind of had to just get on the ride, and just whatever happens, happens. And Monday was the epitome, the apex of this 2024 season. It's like, yeah, man, you just got to be okay with whatever happens. Whatever happens.
And you told us that about 20, 30 games ago. So let me give you your credit for saying, do not get too high, do not get too low. Just kind of ride the roller coaster, and wherever it goes, it goes. And we had the Sports Extra show Sunday night. Maria was asking me what my thoughts were. And I said, yeah, I definitely think they're going to get into the postseason. But here's the piece that, to your point, the roller coaster and the up and down, that I should have known better to talk about, which I said, hey, I trusted Schwelly, right? Spencer Schwellenbach. So I got that right, because he pitched 7 innings, only gave up 1 run, struck out 5, only gave up 4 hits. He wasn't the daggone problem at all. So I got that part right. What I did not expect, to your earlier point, is what Joe Jimenez, Raisel Iglesias, and Pierce Johnson were going to do. And Joe giving up 3 runs, and Raisel giving up 2, Pierce giving up 2. I did not expect that to happen. That is so uncharacteristic, for the most part, of what we have seen for this bullpen throughout the season. And I got to agree with you as well. I'm thinking, because this has been that up and down kind of weird season with the Braves, where, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, they'll go and lay a goose egg one night and then score like 14 runs the next night, and we can't call it. We can't really talk about knowing why. But you had to think positively when you get to the bottom of the third, and the one guy that you effective in Ozzy Albies, but then you get production and he gives you a couple of runs and you're thinking, all right, okay, this might just be the Braves night. Jarvis, why didn't I know better? Why did I just think that because Spencer Schwellenbach was on the mound, that was going to mean the Braves were going to take this thing in the first game and then you could just straight relax in the second game? Of course not. You know how we always talk about the Mets going to Met? Well, the Braves going to Brave. That's the kind of season it's been. And we just are very grateful that they were able to come back in that second game and we were able to exhale.
Yes, that's the the up and downs, the peak and the valleys, and the roller coasters that we've been riding on. So I think that when they were able to come through, and I was reading something that the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks was like, "Oh, the MLB is so just don't have the foresight to be able to do schedule these games. Both of them were off on Monday." I was like, "Yeah, that's a great point." But guess what, though? I don't want to hear from the owner of the team who lost, 5 of their last 7 games to end the season. I don't want to hear that from you. Yes, we can say that. Yeah, like, nah, bro. You need to talk to your manager and your players and say, hey, you can't go down the end of the season. You can't end the season like that. You got to end it on a high note if you're trying to get into the playoffs and not be dependent on a team to lose two straight games in one day to get into the playoffs, because you knew that some of those things were going to happen. You knew that, hey, once the Mets won that first game, because they wanted to face the Brewers, because if they would have swept the Braves, I think they were going to go to the Padres and go play them in the wild card, and they didn't want to do that. That's a West Coast trip. You don't want to do all that. You see what happened to the Braves, because all the other road teams won. So I feel like he made a good point, but I don't want to hear that from the owner of the team who lost 5 of their last 7. So yeah,
now we were one of the top teams the entire second half of the season, and the Braves were scraping by the entirety of the season, but even the second half. Like, yeah, nobody wants to hear that. They did what they were supposed to do, and like you said, give credit to the Mets. They had their backs up against the wall, and they did what they needed to do Monday as well. So sorry, D-backs, we have no love for you, especially because, hey, you got to represent the National League last season in the World Series, so keep it pushing. Speaking of that, the Braves have no sympathy for anybody because they can't. They've been the team most riddled pretty much by injuries this entire season, and it was so befitting, no matter how painful it was, that we got the news that AJ Smith-Shawver will be on the mound for game 1 of the wild card round against the Padres, because Chris Sale was dealing with back spasms. He was dealing with back spasms that didn't allow him to go with his last regular season. His last regular season started. Of course, then we found out he wouldn't be able to go there as well. But again, very, very fitting that this is how the Braves start the wild card round.
Yeah, a guy who hadn't pitched in 4 months. He's had 1 major league start this season, and he was kind of struggling with the home run ball in AAA. To me, it was just like, all right. But on the other side of that, who are they gonna go to? Ian Anderson, Bryce Elder? I don't trust either one of those guys. Ian Anderson hasn't pitched since 2022, so it was the options were awful, and to be honest with you, and essentially it ended up playing out like that anyway, because I feel like, if AJ Smith-Shawver was ultimately going to end up being your opener, why not open it up with Aaron Bummer? You use all your low leverage, relievers anyway. So, and Luke Jackson and Jesse Chavez. So I feel like start the game with Aaron Bummer. The Padres struggle against lefties. So that probably would have been a strategic move, And if it didn't work out, hey, it's an easy one to explain, but Brian Snickers looked like he was just struggling trying to explain this one last night. When you talking about, oh yeah, AJ, and his velocity was down. It's just so many things that probably would have been a red flag in my eyes. My young and not so baseball experty eyes. I know I made up that word, so you don't laugh at me like that. But I think overall, though, this is something that it was definitely an issue, but it definitely wasn't the reason why the Braves lost this team, because like those relievers that I mentioned, those guys only gave up 1 run, for the rest of the game. So
exactly, and that's the thing. Like you said, they always tend to find a way to relieve themselves, or I'm sorry, redeem themselves. The relievers do find a way to redeem themselves. But no, we saw the same issue that we have seen out of this Braves lineup the entire season. So as much as you can say, well, man, AJ Smith-Shawver gave up, like, he gave up 3 runs, and he gave them up way early and kind of put that entire team behind the 8 ball. Okay, no, let's just be real. This is one of those things where, and I get it, Atlanta played 27 innings on the opposite coast, and it was just a little more than 24 hours. That would probably tire everybody out, right, Jarvis? Except this has been a situation that we've been dealing with the entire season since literally anybody, pick anybody, Jarvis, anybody to go to the plate except maybe Marcel Ozuna, and runners in scoring position has been a challenge the entire season, leaving runners stranded, getting to the plate and try to overcompensate. So
The
again,
dreaded wrist disease, T. I call it the wrist disease. 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Yeah, it's just 15 strikeouts. That's not gonna get you anything, really, and especially in the playoffs.
You're not going anywhere in the playoffs. Not with that, especially when you've got guys like Fernando Tatis on the other side batting it like, hey, Fernando Tatis can do so anywhere. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit more about those bats because, again, this silence is something that has not been so golden this entire season. But on the same token, we had a golden story and a golden ticket until we didn't. We'll talk about that when we come back in the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta baseball party is brought to you by FanDuel. Let's start with FanDuel. So, of course, it is the start of the regular season. Can't believe, wow, we're going into week 5 of the NFL season. Big game tomorrow night, of course, for the Atlanta Falcons as they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their second divisional game in a row. And you can take advantage of that if you go to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, let's say things are going again Thursday like they were in that Saints-Falcons game Sunday, where you felt like maybe the Falcons would pull it out, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on that same page where you place your bet. So you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Again, big games are starting to get into divisional matchups all across the league. So now is the time to go to FanDuel and get big returns. You get that hunch in the middle of the game? Check out FanDuel. You can also check them out for the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more. So don't forget, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. This episode of our Atlanta baseball party is also brought to you by Prize Picks. So think about this. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. So remember, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is also the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Texas, and right here in Georgia. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup, because Prize Picks helps you to run your game. All right, Jarvis. So I just wanted to go back real quick before we move on and talk a little bit about Chris Sale, because here's the challenge. As we talked about the bats being nowhere to be found to open postseason play. And it is a little bit disturbing because it was similar to, kind of that up and down that we've seen in terms of 1 minute the Braves are scoring 7 runs like they did, albeit in a loss against the Mets, but 7 runs is 7 runs, right? Or you're going to get out of them what you got out of them Tuesday night, and that's 4-0. But then you'll have a day two where maybe they'll score just 3 runs, but they'll get a shutout. And for me, I think that's the kind of the frustrating piece, right? Because as we talked about before the show, this is kind of, you're in a position where it's survive or die, right? So I just feel like, who do you think, as far as maybe what you've seen, we'll say last 10 games, if you will, who do you think could maybe step up tonight and do something at that plate that might give these Braves a jump start before we are having a conversation about the offseason?
It has to start at the top for me. It has to be Michael Harris, because he's the guy that has been setting the table. And when you look at his history in the postseason, it hasn't been good. It was so funny as they were talking about how his struggles in the postseason. That's when he actually got a hit. So I was like, okay, if he can see the ball, hit the ball, and put the ball in a play where no one actually catches it and get on base, you're like, okay, I know I can do this. And kind of rinse himself of all those struggles that he's had, in his young career, and get things going, because Lord knows they're going to need it. Because at the end of the day, regardless of who's on the mound against the Padres, they have to hit the baseball. Yes. And they had Michael King out there looking like Roger Clemens. I'm talking about this dude, 12 strikeouts, no walks, in 7 innings pitched. I'm talking about breaking all type of MLB records, because I think it was said the reliever that came in, he got 3 more, and I think it was 15 total. So that has never happened before, where a team had been struck out 15 times, no walks and no runs given up. That is the first time that's ever happened in the postseason. So yeah, Braves out here breaking all type of records in a bad way. So
right.
To come back, and I think Harris needs to lead the charge.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, when you look at that stat line is absolutely crazy, because you see 7 hits, but then it's the zeros, like you said, to see 0 runs in the box score, to see 0 earned runs in the box score that they gave up, to see 0 bases on balls in the box score. And of course, that means also you're going to see 0 home runs. But to see that number 15 is really scary. And then you kind of look down the box score for the Braves, and all you see is 04, 04, 04, 04, because you're seeing runs versus at-bats. And it's like, yeah, no matter whether you have a quick turnaround like they did, you have to somehow reset yourself and figure it out, because it truly is win or go home. And like you said, it is not, I mean, it is what it is. Nobody is going to show up and when I say nobody, honestly, I just kind of mean Chris Sale. But Chris Sale is not going to show up and kind of save the day. And I don't think you should be relying on your pitching staff anyway. They've carried you all the way through, Braves, at the bat. So now it's, at the plate. So now it's really time for the Braves to step up, because at the end of the day, when you're, like you said, when you get to the postseason, yes, it does come down to good pitching, but you've got to give some type of run support so you don't put those pitchers in that situation. But speaking of Chris Sale, obviously we got the news that he wouldn't be able to start that final regular season game. He was a late scratch because of back spasms, but the hope was, hey, maybe they'll be able to get him back for the postseason to get through this wild card series. Obviously not. He didn't make the roster for that. And it's really disappointing because, yeah, there he is, a guy who went 18-3, finished the regular season with a 2.38 ERA and 225 strikes. Just a crazy season for a guy that none of us really thought that would happen for. But let's talk about your reaction. First reaction when Brian Snitker confirmed that there would be no Sale on this playoff roster.
What the hell is going on around here?
Braves make angry.
Just like, come on, like, what is this? I don't understand. But again, I go back to my earlier statement. This is the roller coaster we on, baby. We've been riding this mug, so why be shocked at this point? There's no reason for you to be shocked at this point, because this is the guy that no one thought he was going to have this type of season. So, and we know that was that trump card too. In the game of spades, you got that doggone big joker. You know what time that was like, yep, Braves about to get ready to play this big joker. Did next thing you know, they were like, oh, Chris said he got some backspell. Yeah. Oh, he been left off the wild card series. What? I'm just like, man. So yeah, it's almost kind of like, I'm getting ready to play that bad boy. You slap that bad boy on your forehead, And then they were like, "Oh, that's not the big Joker. It's the one with the guaranteed on." It was like, God,
Right.
messing me. So yeah,
Or Jarvis, or they might tell you, "Oh, JD, it's Joker Deuce."
right.
Anyway, we can go on with the space.
Yeah, but yeah, like overall though,
But
and I know there was a lot of disdain towards though, that coming out and people trying to come up with all of these uh these thoughts and ideals like, oh yeah, they're trying to hold off on him, but he's really not hurt. Oh yeah, they're gonna save him for I'm like, no, they said that they were going to use him for an elimination game. They're facing elimination, they're going to use him. So yeah, it's real and believe it. And talking about a guy had, the Triple Crown winner, the presumptive Cy Young Award winner. When you talk about that story, and when you think about it from a big perspective, just a 30,000 foot view, so to speak, that is you can't get mad at him, and you have to kind of look at it from a standpoint and say, hey, this man had an amazing season, and for him to deal with his injuries at his age, he's not a young pup. So, it was kind of expected. The Braves would just had to take advantage of what he was able to do for them in the regular season. And hopefully, if they get a dub tonight, we can see him in the next round if the Braves are able to move on. So, but yeah, it hurt my heart when I saw that news come out. I'm just like, man, golly, man. Another thing, but again, we on this roller coaster ride, baby.
Yep. Par for the course for 2024. And like you said, he's 35. So for him to be able to pull that out as he did, and looking at the 5 years of injury-riddled seasons before he got here, everything you got from him was going to be a bonus. So to walk away with that record that he has, you cannot be mad about that. And look, it's a 2-year, $38 million contract. So hopefully you have the opportunity to see him come back next year and maybe do the same. And then hopefully you'll also have, obviously, the arsenal that'll include the likes of Spencer Strider that'll put this team back in the situation we're accustomed to, where you have that full cadre of pitchers and a pitching rotation or a pitching staff overall to be able to help you manage through and get back to playing Braves ball. Speaking of that, we say Chris Sale will be back next season, but we don't know if it'll just be Chris or if Maximum will be back to have maybe another max season. We'll talk about that when we come back in What's Next. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Maybe not Queens, but booking today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. And you can also get the Booking.com app today. Now, Booking.com has hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during postseason. Now, I will tell you, while we don't want to admit that we like Philadelphia, the city's not a bad place to actually go, especially at this time of the season if you love to see foliage during the fall. Maybe it's time to test your baseball competition stadium cuisine as well. Luckily, on Booking.com, you can find a stadium stay that's just right for you. So no matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Braves country, Booking.com can make you a fan of any city. It's the right stay that can make you a fan. So even if your baseball rival is the Phillies, you can go there and you can do your thing. Don't forget that you're looking to go to Booking.com to book your travel. Again, that's Booking.com, Booking.yeah. So Jarvis, we have seen this day come. It feels like every season for the last 5 or 10 seasons, but real talk, it's just been like the last couple of seasons when, of course, we thought that the Braves would retain Freddie Freeman. He moved on. Los Angeles Dodgers. We thought that maybe there was a chance the Braves would retain Dansby Swanson. He moved on. Chicago Cubs. And now here we are again, seeing the Braves possibly let go of a guy who, and I say this all the time, but I'm going to say it again, a guy who has always seemed to really be under the radar, right? Because there was always some pitcher that the Braves said, hey, that guy's our ace. And then that guy went down, and then Max Fried played like an ace. And then that guy went down, and Max Fried played like an ace again. And so now here we are with the Braves de facto ace and it may indeed be the last time that we have seen him. Obviously, we'll see him tonight because the Braves season and this series is on the line. But first off, how good would it be to see Maximum Free tonight hit the mound and do his thing?
To be honest with you, T, as how I was feeling as far as this season coming down, watching that his performance against the Royals on the 27th,
Yeah.
82 thirds, he only gave up 3 hits, only 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, T.
Yeah.
I thought that was it because the way he was walking off the mound, and he wanted to get that
really
complete game.
emotional.
He
Yeah.
tipped the cap, and I was just like, man, I was like, is this it? I thought that was it because Braves, who knows what's going to happen? There was a point in as the season started to wind down, I was like, man, these dudes might not make the playoffs. So for him to come out to put the type of performance on the field, in that moment when they know they needed to get a dub, I felt like that was the last one. And then coming into tonight's game, I started to think back to 2021 when closing out the Astros, him being on the mound and pitching the gym, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. And with Freddie and Dansby, I feel like I kind of knew those guys weren't going to be here because, I'm always being petty when it comes to Liberty Media and the Braves, and I know they're a separate entity now. And I don't know. Everybody's still making money. The people who own the Braves, they're still making all type of money. So from that standpoint, I just like, oh, they are going to do what they normally do. They're going to have some conversations with these guys and say, hey, man, this is what we're willing to offer you. And then somebody else gonna back up the Brinks truck and pass them the bag, and they're gonna be out of here. So, and that's truly unfortunate. You just hope that this isn't the last one. But if he goes out there and pitches another gym, I feel like that would be nostalgic, and it would be great for the Braves because the odds are against them. There has been no team who has lost the first game in these three game series of the wild card that lost that first game and come back and win the series.
Yeah.
It's only happened one time that they forced the game 3. So most of the time it's a sweep. Like you win that first game, more than likely you're gonna get in there. So I feel like this is a huge game for Max Fried. But if this is his last time we see him, I'm good because I understand the parameters in which the Braves operate when it comes to paying folks, and it just sucks that we have to kind of continue to deal with it.
Yeah, and I think the toughest part for us is knowing whether or not, and really, yes, it comes down to money, but a lot of times it comes down to the years because the Braves just refuse. If you want 6 years, for example, with Freddie Freeman, nope, we only want to give you 5. And that seems to be like the thing that is broken or stop negotiations time and time again for them. So it'll be interesting. But let me ask you a little devil's advocate question. While Max Fried should have gotten the opportunity to pitch a complete game and certainly pitched a gem in his last game for the regular season, could pitch a gem also tonight. But look at his regular season. It was about as up and down as the Braves regular season. So that said, do you think that gives the Braves any leverage to potentially retain him as far as his appeal in the open market?
Nope. You talk about a left-handed, a guy who could potentially be the ace of your staff, and you don't have to worry about bidding against his team that has had him for 10 years. So and then we even going back to, it was interesting because he was asked about the owner of the guy running the franchise for the Padres was the one that traded him. They got Justin Upton in the Justin Upton trade, which is like to read that name. I was just like, man, I haven't heard that name in so long. But anyway, I think that coming from the West Coast, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the West Coast. Who knows? One of those teams we're probably going to back up the Brinks truck and pay him and give him all his money and bring him back home, so to speak. So it's just so kind of frustrating when you have to think about it in this light. And for Max Fried, you have to kind of be in this situation. It just ultimately it kind of stinks. It just stinks.
Yeah, it does. It really, really does. Because like you said, he was drafted 7th overall by the Padres, and you get him in exchange for Justin Upton, and then he gives you everything. The 2-time NL All-Star, I think 6th in Cy Young voting, 2021 World Series that you just called lights out. And then, you even look at things like a clean inning that he pitched in an MLB All-Star game, career best 17 games in 29. I mean, you could go on and on about who he's been, but I think even more so, it's where he's been so special when you lose like a Michael Soroka, or so special when you lose a Spencer Strider. And he's just quietly been consistent, regardless of this season going 11-10, but he has quietly been so consistent for this Braves team. And like you said, if we don't get him back, he's definitely given the Braves everything that he could. And you just can't be mad about that. But hopefully we'll be having some conversation at least about the possibility of seeing Max Fried one more time, because who knows? These Braves have been so up and down. They could shock the world and actually win this series, which really shouldn't be shocking, because everything about this season has just been up and down crazy, and shouldn't shock you with anything that might happen tonight. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Baseball Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Braves for your second listen, and be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you download your podcast. We'll see you on the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday.